morning. I'm reading from Acts chapter 7, verses 20 to 36. At this time Moses was born, and he was beautiful in God's sight. And he was brought up for 3 months in his father's house. And when he was exposed, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and brought him up as her own son. And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and deeds. When he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them being wronged, he defended the oppressed man and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian. He supposed that his brothers would understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand, but they did not understand. And on the following day, he appeared to them as they were quarreling and tried to reconcile them, saying, "Men, you are brothers. Why do you wrong each other?" But the man who was wronging his neighbor thrust him aside, saying, "Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" At this retort, Moses fled and became an exile in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. Now when 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai, in a flame of fire in a bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight, and as he drew near to look, there came the voice of the Lord. "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob." And Moses trembled and did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, "Take off the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their groaning. And I have come down to deliver them. And now come, I will send you to Egypt." This Moses, whom they rejected, saying, "Who made you a ruler and a judge?" This man God sent as both ruler and redeemer by the hand of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. This man led them out, performing wonders and signs in Egypt and at the Red Sea and in the wilderness for 40 years. Amen.
I'm going to start preaching. I'll try. This week and the next 2 weeks, I'll be doing the teaching series on leadership. I wanted to kind of do a leadership training for a few people. But I feel God said to me that everyone here is a leader. That everybody needs to be trained, because the next phase of what we're going to do, all of you are going to be leading something. After the new year, we'll have praying and fasting. After that, we're going to launch our small groups. A lot of you will be leading small groups. So we're going to take this next 3 weeks and just do a general foundation on leadership. But beyond the leading in the church, what I'm telling you applies in any area. If you're working, you're a leader in your workplace, this will apply to you. Coincidentally, it was interesting. I was telling you yesterday. I was planning this, and then my supervisors in university, they called me to come and talk to undergraduate students on leadership. So yesterday, the whole of yesterday, I was talking to undergraduate students on leadership. So it was what a coincidence. Yeah. So I feel like we can gain everyone. So be open, even if you don't. When I say leading a small group, say that's not me. Don't switch up, because if you have a business, if you have a home, if you work somewhere, God has called you there to lead. And the principles here apply in every sphere. Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We bless your name, Lord. We give you thanks. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, Father, for your hand upon us. Lord, as we go through these sessions, and Lord, would you open our understanding? Teach us by your Spirit. And may everyone here get something that they will use for life and for your kingdom. Holy Spirit will welcome you. Open our hearts. Speak to us in the way and in the language we'll understand. And all God's people said, Amen. In Romans chapter 12, verse 8, the Bible says, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. Just there highlights the fact that leading is not for a particular set of people. That leading, being a leader, God recognizes it and affirms it. And he says that if you're a leader, there's a way you do it. He said, do it with diligence. So the whole of this series I want to do is to lay foundation for understanding leadership and then how we can lead in different spheres and spaces God will bring us to in the coming months and years. First of all, I'll just give a leadership overview. I'll go faster because a lot of you are going to switch off here, but I just wanted to do it justice. When you think of leadership, what comes to your mind? Seven. Yeah, just talk to me. Vision, yeah. Power. Example. Sacrifice. Strategic. We can go on. I can fill a whole board with that. I think a slide was going to come up, and when people ask people to think about leadership, these are some of the things they're thinking. Oh, capacity. That man might buy a cup of coffee. Ability, behavior, its relationship, authentic, ethical, spiritual, discursive. That means, it's not a force. You cannot engage somebody in dialogue. Humble, inclusive. We all want a leadership like this. We can go on and say so many things about what leadership is. I'll just give you a background. I'm doing a research on leadership, and so I take interest in leadership. I've been studying leadership for a long time, and I tried to do. I looked at the evolution of the theory of leadership. How has leadership evolved over the years? And from the 1900s up to now, the way people see leadership has evolved. In the 1900 to 1929, the idea was ability, where power and control is centralized in one person. So when you hear definitions like leadership is capacity and will to rally men and women to a common purpose, and the character inspires confidence, that's coming from that. Or a leader is one who knows the road, who can keep ahead and push others after him. Or a leader is a person who has the ability to get others to do what they don't want to do, and they like him for doing it. So that was the initial. That was the thought between 1900 people. Power, one strong person who can just muster things, and you think of Napoleon, or you think of Alexander the Great, those kind of leaders. And then over time, the 1930s, the thought began to change to threats. That means that I'm saying that these great men that who were able to do that, they possess certain traits. That there are things about them that make them do what they do. So that this trait make people, draw people to them. So they began to talk about leadership as influence. That leadership is influence. The ability of one person to influence others. So that one can lead others only to the extent he can influence them to follow his lead. So the critical question for a leader is who is following you. If you are leading and nobody is following, then you are not a leader. So again, leadership may be defined as the quality in a leader, in the blind individual, that inspires sufficient confidence in the subordinates, as to be willing to accept their views and carry out their commands. That's the thought in the 1930s. By the 1940s, they begin to think, okay, this threat is not just about trade. There's a way these people, there's a way they behave. That all these great leaders, they behave in a particular way. So begin to think of leadership as behavior. And in 1950s, it changes. Say, look, it's not just they behave a certain way, but the leadership has to be relational. That people have to be in relation for you to be able to lead. You can't just stay somewhere and then lead. So you engage with people. And in the 1960s, it changed. They begin to think of leaders have been able to influence people, influence a group of people towards a common goal. So leadership, the definitions like leadership is the act of combining ideas, people, time, faith, and things to achieve a common goal. And over time, in the 1970s, the thoughts about organizational approach to leadership began to emerge. And classically, in the 80s, the thought of transformational leadership. Have you heard of transformational leadership? And that's where the idea of charismatic leadership come up. That's from the 1980s. And when we see this is a transformational leader, there's a charismatic leader. This guy that, he will tell you to, sell your house and give him the money. He will collect it. And the people have abused that, both in the church and elsewhere. In the 1990s, there's this debate about leadership and management. What is leadership? What is management? What's the difference between leadership and management? I won't go into that. When you come to the class, I will teach that. But from there comes the idea of servant leadership and, of followership. Followership begin to get a good research into, because it says there is no leadership without followership. And then adaptive leadership. So leaders are able to adapt to situations. And here we are in the 21st century, is the emergence of moral applications to leadership. And that's when we begin to talk about, is it authentic? Because people question every single thing. That's why, if somebody, you lie, resign. If you have a party when we're supposed to be in a house, you're gone. So authentic, we're going to talk about authenticity of leadership and ethical. Is it right? I was telling them in the class yesterday that in a church, a couple left the church because the pastor didn't follow strict COVID protocols. Because he wasn't ethical in his leadership. and then another church, another couple left because the pastor was following the protocol so rigidly. So you're never going to win. So we're talking we're talking about ethical leadership, but also spiritual leadership. Or discussive leadership, where it's not just, you don't just give people things and command people. You engage in dialogue. You reason with people. Humble leadership and inclusive leadership. I don't know if you've been in if you get a job today, they will talk about the inclusivity. On Wednesday, we're in the class, we're talking about they call it EDI. Anybody gone on that course? EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. So many big organizations that they are hiring people as EDI champions, and let me not talk about how I feel about it. But at the end of the conversation, I say, can we change this to DI instead of EDI? I said the DIE. I said why? I said because if we're going to achieve equality, we have to recognize diversity. When we recognize diversity, then we'll try to include everyone. That's how we can achieve equality. So let's call it die, not when you die to yourself, then you recognize that it's not just about you. There are other people. This person is unique. I'm going off the tangent now. So part about this is where people are looking at leadership in the 21st century. So from all that we can say to you about these are the components of leadership. Leadership is a process. Involves influence. Leadership occurs in groups. Leadership involves common goals. So based on that, a definition of leadership we can take is leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve goals common to the group. So here I'll say that leadership is not trait or characteristics residing in a leader. It is not a transactional event between leaders and followers. Because leaders affect followers, but also leaders are affected by followers. Now, leadership is not linear. It's not one from top bottom. It is interactive. That leadership is not restricted to the one great guy or maverick. Rather, it is available to everyone. That means that, look, there's no particular trait that you need to have for you to be a leader. God has called you, equipped you to be a leader the way you are. And yes, when I talk of Christian leadership, I was thinking that it takes place when a leader mobilizes, inspires other people with varying gifts and abilities for the advancement of a God-given, redemptive, or restorative purpose. So church leadership must therefore be looked in terms of interactions. The pastor, the pastoral team, the congregation, with the God-given purpose for the church, the processes of fulfilling that purpose, and the product of these interactions. As Cos Apostle in the book, The Leadership Challenge, they say something that I like so much. They say that leadership knows no racial or religious bounds, no ethnic or cultural borders. What they're saying there is that leadership happens everywhere and is valid everywhere. That if good leadership happens, it can be successful in the church, it can be successful in the marketplace. So leadership is not something that is out there, it's something that we engage in and we cannot run away from. So my plan in this series is to use biblical figures to look at how leaders are made and the character of successful leaders and the practices that are associated with successful leadership. So that's a way of overview and a background. So today, can say I'm just starting. So today, I'll be talking to you about the making of a leader. How are leaders made? And that brings us to the passage that was just read to us in Acts chapter 7, verse 20 to 36. I was talking about Moses. You will see that Moses was born in due time. In the purpose of God, Moses was born. If you go back in Genesis 15, God had told Abraham that your seed will be in captivity in a strange land for 400 years. And after that, I'll visit them. Then when the time was coming, Joseph was sold to Egypt. Then the whole of Israel went to Egypt. They were in Egypt for 400 years. And it was getting to the time God has prophesied. The Egyptians hated the Israelites, begin to oppress them, but they had increased. At that moment, Moses was born. When Moses was born, he was born at a time when they were killing men. Young child are born, they killed them off. But the parents, fell for him and kept him, for 3 months, and then they had to let him go. And then Pharaoh's daughter picked him up and brought him up as her own son in the palace. So he was educated in all the ways of Egypt. And it looked like it was a coincidence. No, God was working at something. I'll come to that in a moment. So Moses was born in a due season. And I dare tell you, you're not an accident. There is a problem God created you to solve. You don't feel it because you haven't discovered that problem. But there is a problem God created you to solve. You're not a problem, you're a solution to a problem. People might have told you otherwise, but you need to get this, that God had a purpose for creating you. That the space where you are now, there is a reason why you are in that space. The place you walk now, there is a reason why you walk there. It may look like coincidences, but God had a plan. So Moses was born for a purpose. He operated in the office of a prophet, a priest, and a king. These are the three offices in the Old Testament. I will come in the New Testament in 1 Peter 2:9. Say, for you are a chosen people. You are a kingdom of priests. God's holy nation, his own possession. This is so you can show others the goodness of God, for he called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Say, we are a kingdom of priests. In Revelation 5:10, it says, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. God has made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. So you need to, just like Moses was born, you were born for a purpose, and God has called us, his people, as kings and priests to him. If you see Moses' story, he was always responding to conflicts around him. In short, he was at his best and also at his worst, doing this. Whether jumping into a fight to defend a Hebrew slave, or trying to referee a fight between two kinsmen, or trying to save vulnerable girls from oppression. Moses, when he saw something that is not right, he doesn't keep quiet. And I come to that, for that is a key to understanding your purpose, the key to understanding what God has called you to be. Moses, he never stopped responding or reacting to things, but over time, as God dealt with him, he learned to respond wisely and more appropriately. So leadership will always involve reaction. If for us to react with instinct that is consistent with God's will, we have to develop habits of obedience. In times when there are no crises, develop habits of obedience to God, so that when there's pressure, you will respond also with obedience. Are you getting what I'm saying? So, in Moses, we see an outstanding personality shaped by God. One thing that God didn't change Moses, who he was or what he was. He didn't give him new abilities or strengths. He took Moses' characteristics and molded it until it suited his purposes. This is crucial. You're waiting, say, if only I'm like that person, then I will do what God wants me to do. God is not going to make you that person. He's made you. You don't need a new strength. You don't need a new... the way you are is all God needs to do what he wants to do with you. Moses complained, I'm a stammerer, I can't speak. Why are you sending me to go and speak? I said, I made him out. If your stammer was a problem with me, I will fix it. So for you to understand that you are, the way God made you is enough for you to do what he has called you to do. That's why Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So the making of a leader will involve, first of all, understand the calling of a leader. And there is a calling. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 24 to 27, it talks about Moses. It said, by faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called a son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer, to share ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered abuse suffered for Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. For he was looking ahead to the reward. By faith, he left Egypt, unafraid of the king's anger, for he persevered as though he saw him who is invisible. Understanding your calling as a leader is a journey of discovery. It's not a decision you make, it's a discovery you make. Moses, over time, discovered that this is what he was called to be. And for you to discover what God has called you to be, there are key questions you need to answer for yourself, honestly. Who are you? It's not what people say you are. It's not the box people have put you in. Or I see you as this. I see you. I'm not saying what people say are not important, but who are you? What has God called you to be? Not what you want to be. What has he called you to be? You need to discover this for yourself. I have clarity. Where has God called you? You don't walk in Tesco's and ask Sainsbury's to pay you. Where has he called you? With whom has he called you? But when God calls you to an assignment, he doesn't call you alone. You need to answer these questions clearly, honestly, in your journey to discovering your calling as a leader. I said to us many months ago that when you understand who you are and where you belong, you will refuse to adapt to where you are. When you understand who you are and where you belong, you refuse to adapt to where you are. Moses was brought up as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. But over time, he discovered that he was not the son of, that was not his assignment. He refused to adapt to the palace because he had a mission somewhere else. How do you discover your purpose? I'll say that Moses was always responding to situations. When he saw somebody being maltreated, he jumped into a fight, and then he just he dealt with the guy and buried it. And next time, guys, why are you fighting? And then he runs away to media, and he saw these ladies who are headsmen, and the guys were come to harass them, and he jumps in and takes the guys away and takes care of the ladies. Whenever he saw injustice, something in him just goes up. So I will say to you, the problems that infuriate you, the things you cannot get your eyes off, these are the problems God has called you to solve. Whatever bothers you is a clue to what God has called you to correct. Your purpose, what God has called is the assignment he created you for. The problem he created you to solve. For me, the most important thing you must know as a leader is to know what God has called you to do. Because your calling will affect your training and your preparation. So that brings me to the second point, the preparation of a leader. When you're called, for you to be successful, you don't just do. There's a process of preparing. The preparation of a leader is a process. It involves training. You look at when you go to look at Exodus chapter 2, verse 11 to 22. That has to do with Moses. But look at Acts 7, verse 22. It says, so Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of Egypt, of the Egyptians, and was powerful in words and in deeds. So God, knowing, because of his assignment, he placed him in the palace. He got all the education of Egypt. He knew the culture. He knew all the wisdom. He knew all the ways of the magicians, because we're going to confront them later. So his Egyptian education was part of it. I dare to tell you that where you are, the education you got, the school you went to, they're not an accident. Some of you wish you went to a different school. In my secondary school, when I got to uni, people were talking about the schools they went to. And they were talking about the top schools. And when we were with guys, and that's where you get bullied. And they were just talking, they would say, I went to this school, I went to this school. So I decided to talk loud because I was thinking, what am I going to say? Because if you mention my school, nobody even knows the school where I went to. So I was just thinking, when they finished, I was just thinking, when they finished, and I said, okay, we came to my turn and said, all of you are done since, I said, yes, all of you are done. I started calling them. I said, let me say, you mean you went to Eton College and you have to do A-level straight time before you get into uni? I said, so you went to this college, you did a GCSE straight time before you get to uni. So I just rubbished all of them. I said, I went to a village school that nobody knows about. Now, by the time I finished, the issue was not the village school. Okay. Well, I know I started telling you that story. I'm just saying that, look, it doesn't matter the school you went to. It doesn't matter where you went to. There was a purpose for you going there. The 40 years training in the wilderness. The looking after Jethro's flock was all part of the training. Because God was preparing him, because he was going to be a shepherd over millions of people. When you walked in that place that you didn't like, maybe for 2 weeks, you may not like it, but there is something God wants to teach you there. Get it, because you're going to need it down the road. I've come to believe that my life is not about me, it's about God's purpose. So every space I find myself, there's a reason God put me in that space, and I want to learn from that space, for it's a preparation for the next space I'm going to go into. Also, he learned lessons dealing with his own personal limitations. I give you an example. When God appeared to him in Exodus chapter 3, he said, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to go. Moses said, who am I? Look at Exodus 3, 11 to 12. He said, who am I that you will send me to Pharaoh? I said, God, let me tell you, I grew up in that palace. I knew that guy. I knew how to operate. I knew their systems. And I don't measure up. Who am I that should send me to Pharaoh? Moses has to deal with his own personal limitations. God had to tell him, look, I'm sending you. I chose you. I said, you got the wrong guy. No, I didn't make mistake. I chose you. A lot of times you disqualify yourself. A lot of times you think, I'm not good enough. I'm not confident enough. I'm a shy person. And anybody who tells me they are shy, I say, look, you're not as shy as I am. Honestly speaking, you're not as shy as I am. I'm not a social person. Look, I could be a social recluse. I could be in my room and not miss anyone. But over time, when you discover your purpose, you know that my purpose is not to stay in my room and lock myself out of the world. So you have to confront your personal challenges and limitations. Say, who am I? What shall I tell them? And God said, go tell them that I am sent you. Say, God, you could do better than that. You could do better than that. At times I don't even know what to say. Don't worry about it. When you get there, God will give you something to say. If he's sending you, then he trusts you. There may be somebody you think more qualified than you, more educated than you, more positioned than you. But God didn't choose them. He chose you for this assignment because he uses the weak things to confront the strong, the foolish to confront the wise. So you deal with that. Say, it's okay. What if they don't believe me? God, tell them I am. What if they don't believe? What if they say you have not appeared to me? You know, there's something causes personal called the first law of leadership. Say, if you don't believe the messenger, you will not believe the message. He said, what if they don't believe me? Moses is saying, if they don't believe me, then whatever you want to do is finished because it's not going to work. At times you may not come packaged the way you want yourself packaged. But God is okay with the way he has packaged you. And then he says again, no, I'm not eloquent. Therefore, I'm not qualified. In fact, he made a case, say, look, I've never been eloquent. From the day I was born, I'm a stammerer, and I don't see myself in Moses because I'm not eloquent. I'm a terrible stammerer. And so standing speaking to people doesn't look like my assignment. But God said to him, I created the mouth, the vocal cords. Say, I will be with your mouth. You know what I'm learning here is that whatever God has called you to do, you are capable of doing it, and he will be with you. That's all you need. God is the one who calls, he qualifies, and then he trains us for the assignment he's called us to do. So it is not your place to qualify or disqualify yourself. Hebrews 5:4 says, and one does not presume to take this honor, but takes it only when called by God, just as Aaron was. When you embrace your calling, comes with challenges. My third point here is the challenges of the leader. When you get your called, trained, and released into your assignment, God with you, he doesn't give you immunity from challenges. Did you hear me? In Exodus chapter 3, verse 10 to 12, you'll see, I'm not going to go through the passages. You see the assignment of Moses. But I try to categorize the challenges of a leader into four. One, challenge that has to do with assignment, which means that the challenge of understanding the assignment and staying with it. Because if you don't understand the assignment, you can miss it. You need to understand the challenge of understanding what God has called you to do and staying with it. But also avoiding compromises and diversions along the way. I can give you a passage, but there are things that happen with Moses that which we should learn from. He appears before Pharaoh saying, God has sent me, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, who is God? I don't know him. I don't fear him. You are going nowhere. Get out. And Moses go back to God and say, I told you that I'm not the right guy. And God sends him back again. He goes, it's okay. I'm going to show you signs. I began to show Pharaoh signs. Say, okay. Let's talk. Now, this about, he said, what do you want to go and do again? We want to go to the wilderness sacrifice. Okay, I'll think about it. Before I was saying, no. Now he said, okay, I will think about it. That's good. And then he comes back, he said, okay, I will allow you sacrifice, but do it in the land. One would say, if you don't understand your assignment was go bring the people out. Moses would have said, okay, at least he has given us he's giving us a leeway, so we can at least we can go to church now, we can worship now. All good. That's not the assignment. That was a compromise. And Moses said, no, we are going to go out. It's okay, we will go out. Say, but Pharaoh said, okay, I'll allow only the men to go. The women and the children should stay. Another compromise. That's not I'm saying this for you to be aware when the devil is giving you compromise, when God has given you an assignment. Moses said, no, we're all going to go out. Third time he says to him, okay, I will allow you go, but don't go very far. Say, no, we must go everything. So the point that the enemy, if you don't understand your assignment, keeping with the terms of reference of the assignment is a challenge. I have to be clear to stay with you so you don't get diverted. Secondly, the people God assigned you to. If God has called you to a people group, that's a challenge also. And if you look at Exodus 14, verse 11, you know the people say after he's brought them out of Egypt, say, Moses, is there not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die in the wilderness? We're better off in Egypt. I miss the cucumber. The onions, the garlic. So I don't know what you're missing the other side. Every time there was a problem, they would complain. The people were a challenge to Moses. You have to know how to deal with that challenge. But also there's the enemy who doesn't want you to fulfill the assignment. When they dealt with the Pharaoh, managed the people well, then Amalek comes in Exodus 17, comes and opposes, you're not getting to the promised land God has given to you. The Amalek came to attack Israel. He had to deal with that. But finally, the leader, the fourth challenge is the family. When in the wilderness, in Exodus 18, because Moses had left his wife and children with the in-law to lead the people out. I think he has forgotten about them, honestly. And then the father-in-law, a good man, said, okay, I just want you to know that you have a wife, you have 2 kids. You're doing great, but look after your family. And then, so he has to juggle that. Another time, he has his siblings, Aaron and Miriam. They began to say, is it only God is speaking to? God also speaks to us. Sibling rivalry. Now, when I say that, when God calls you, you have to deal with this challenge. There will be family problems you have to contend with. There is an enemy you have to contend with. God does not take away our challenges or struggles in order for us to serve him. He gives us grace to serve his purposes despite our challenges. Okay. I said the best way I just summarize, I'm going to close with 7 lessons, 7 leadership lessons from the life of Moses. Number 1, God calls, prepares, and then uses. God calls, he prepares, and then he uses. God's timetable could be life-sized. I'll give you the two examples. In Jeremiah 1:5, God said to Jeremiah, before you were born, before you were conceived, I knew you, I called you, I ordained you to be a prophet to the nations, before ever you were conceived. And in Exodus chapter 7, verse 7, he said, Moses was 80 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. I don't know if you're getting the point I'm trying to make here. God is the one who calls, he prepares us, and he uses us. The process could be a long process. We have to be open to that and respond to that. Secondly, God does his greatest works through frail people. God does his greatest works, his greatest accomplishment through people who are frail, people who are not perfect. Anybody here feel like you're not perfect? So I'm not alone. Then you're the right guy, you're the right woman. God uses imperfect people. So don't when I ask to do something, say, okay, wait, let me get myself together. You can never be together. Say, let me sort myself out. If you're capable of sorting yourself out, you won't be where you are now. You will have sorted yourself out long ago. 50 years still sorting yourself out? Hasn't that told you can't do it by yourself? God uses frail people, weak people. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7, the Bible says there that we have this treasure in earthen vessels, in jars of clay, so that the excellence of the power will be of God and not of us. God uses frail people so that nobody will glory in his presence. In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul was talking about the thorn in the flesh. He said, for this reason, I entreated the Lord, I called on the Lord, take this away from me 3 times. And 3 times he says to me, my grace is sufficient for you, because my strength is made perfect in weakness. And said, therefore I will rejoice in my infirmities, I will rejoice in my weaknesses, I will rejoice in all my struggles, because when I am weak, then I am strong. You feel weak, inadequate, you qualify. God does his work with frail people. Thirdly, when faced with challenges, assess the situation, take your fears to God and listen for his response, and then obey him. I think I gave passages there. Moses, when there was issue, he didn't know what to do. There was no precedence. He goes to God. How do we do this? You know what I said? That being a leader doesn't mean you know everything. Be comfortable to say, I don't know. It doesn't diminish you. Be content to say, okay, I will figure it out. Don't try to pretend that you have all the answer, because you don't. Don't give the pressure that you have it all together, because you don't. So the things you don't know, there are things will happen, you don't know what to do. Say, we're still figuring it out. And that is okay. But take your fears to God. Present it to him. Listen to him, and he will tell you what to do. Fourthly, Delegation and empowering the people you delegate are very crucial for effective leadership. Moses learned the hard way. His in-law gave him good counsel in Exodus 18. Because Moses was sitting judging the people, and the people would queue up and block M25 and go all the way for the M1 and A1M, and people waiting for Moses to see him. And the man said to him, what you're doing is not good. If you continue this way, you worry yourself, you worry these people, break it down. Release people, leaders of tens, leaders of 50s, leaders of hundreds, and let them have oversight. Then you stand before God, hear from God, and then give the people God's counsel. Whatever they cannot do, they bring that to you. Don't do everything yourself. And sometimes it looks like I'm so laid back because I don't want to do everything myself. And it's not being smart. It's recognized that I don't know how to do everything. I think maybe there are very few things I can do, honestly. And I'm not ashamed of that. I don't know much. But like, a congregation like this, every one of you are gifted in particular places, in particular areas. God's design is that you use your gifts and then build his house. Not one person building house. Building is not done by one person. Show me any building that's built by one person. Maybe it's a hut that you're doing DIY. But even in that DIY that you didn't, it's not one skill that you need to do it. You need a carpenter, you need a mason, you need an electrician, you need a plumber. The different skills are needed. So when you leading a team, learn to delegate. Don't do everything yourself. Doing everything that's not your job as a leader. Your job as a leader is to make sure that things are done. They don't have to be done by you. Number 5. Successful leadership must be deliberate in mentorship to ensure successful succession. Moses invested in Joshua. And so when his job was done, Joshua was qualified, prepared for the assignment God has for him. If you're leading a team, the first question you should ask, if I'm not there, would the team function? If your answer is no, there's a problem. If you start leading a small group from day one, you need to ask yourself, who is the next leader in this group? If you don't have the answer, don't sleep until you find the answer. You need to identify the next leader, invest in them, train them, spend time with them, and help them come through. It's not accident. You have to be intentional in doing that. Number 6, intimate relationship with God is the leader's greatest privilege and asset. Intimate relationship with God is the leader's greatest privilege and asset. It's a privilege because God grants you access into his secrets. It's an asset because you get to know the secrets of God. You know what to do and what not to do. So as a leader, you have to learn to spend time with God. If you're going to be a successful leader in God's house, you have to learn to spend time with God. Develop an ongoing relationship that is dynamic, not the experience of yesterday, because yesterday is gone. There's something he wants to do next. And if you're not in tune with him, you'll be doing what he told you yesterday when there's a new thing today. I don't know if you have your computer, computer. I don't know if you try to. Anybody still do, if you're using Windows? Anybody still operating Windows 7? You understand what I mean? Imagine you're trying to do stuff on Windows. It will be telling you this is not compatible, this is not compatible. You won't function. That's why there's updates. Finally, number 7. Personal greatness does not make a person immune to error or its consequences. Moses, Bible said there was not a man like him. He has such intimacy with God. He knew God such a deeper level. God said, if there's when God came to me and said, if there's a prophet among you, I'll speak to them in visions, in dreams. But for my servant Moses, I speak to him face to face. But in Numbers 20, verse 10 to 12, when the people were murmuring and complaining, we are dying of thirst here, give us water. Moses goes to God. He did the right thing. God said to him, take your staff with you. Go to the rock. Speak to the rock. Speak to the rock. And Moses gets to the rock. And people always say, you rebels. How long will you not fear God? Watch us bring water out of this rock for you. And he's talking bam, twice. And God said to him and to Aaron, because you did not honor me before the people, you will not enter the land I've promised them. To whom much is given, much is expected. It doesn't matter how great you are as a leader, or how much you've accomplished, or how much you've grown in him. It does not preclude you from error. You can make an error. But also, it does not give you immunity over the consequences of the error. There are consequences when we make, because when God brings you into certain intimacy, certain relationship, there are things he expects from you. When he reveals certain things to you, he trusts you with his secrets. He wants you to treasure it. I've tried, what I'm trying to communicate to you today, that every one of us has been created by God for an assignment. That you don't need to become somebody else to do what God has called you to do. You just need to discover what it is. That you have whatever it takes to do what He's called you to do. That you seated there, you're a leader, you're a leader, you're a leader. God has called you to lead, and you can lead. You need to discover what He's called you to, and then submit yourself to the process of preparing you, training you, learning. There will be challenges, but you can be assured that God will always be with you. He will bring you through all of them. But God has called all of us to accomplish great things for Him. In our individual lives, in our workplace, in our families, and in this place in Peniel, we will accomplish great things for God. I want to ask you to stand, and I will close with reading Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. I'm going to read it in the Amplified Version as I close. Say, for we are His workmanship, His own masterwork, a work of art, created in Christ Jesus. That means we are reborn from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, ready to be used for good works. Works which God prepared for us beforehand. Taking paths which He said, so that we would walk in them, living the good life which He pre-arranged and made ready for us. You are His workmanship. Do lift your hand.